Welcome to a special debate version of Here and Now. I'm Anthony Germain. In exactly 2 weeks, voters in the district of Windsor Lake are going to cast their ballots in a provincial by-election. And a year from now, the rest of us will be voting in provincial and federal elections. So we thought a showcase debate involving the three candidates would help highlight and focus some of the important issues right across our province. But before we get started, a quick word about the format tonight. We sent the candidates tonight's topics in advance, and the speaking order, as well as the podium positions, those were all determined by random draw. The candidates are going to be asked the same questions, and then they will debate each other. There are time limits for each section, and candidates don't have to use all of their time, but it's my job to make sure they don't go over. So let's get this Windsor Lake debate started with opening remarks from Mr. Crosby. Mr. Crosby, you have 90 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Germain. In the weeks I've been going door to door in Windsor Lake District, the unspoken question the voters are too polite to ask is, why should I trust you? Let's face it, trust in politicians is in short supply these days. I tell people in Windsor Lake that I've had a good career as a lawyer, helping people enforce their rights against big corporations and big government. I don't need to make a pile of money. I do want to make a difference. I tell people on the doorsteps that this by-election is about electing an advocate for Windsor Lake District. But it's also about electing a leader of the PC opposition in the House, whose job it is to hold the government to account. And because trust is in short supply, I tell people there's a general election next year, and you're only being asked to hire me for a year. And I tell them, if I haven't earned your trust, you can fire me, and if I have earned your trust, you can hire me to deliver on lower taxes, affordable energy, and honest government.
Mr. Crosby, your time is up. We're going to go now to the opening statements of Ms. Neal. Ms. Neal.
Hello, my name is Carrie Claire Neal. I am a feminist, an activist, a social economist, and volunteer director of the MUN Tax Clinic, the largest free tax clinic that helps low-income earners file our taxes in this province. I am running to be MHA for Windsor Lake because I care about our province, and I have the solutions to make a difference. I am fed up with watching the Liberals and the Progressive Conservatives mismanage our economy. And I believe that if we elect people who understand the issues and have solutions that put our people first, we can do things better. We, the NDP, represent a smarter solution, a stronger democracy, and a greener, more sustainable economy. And that's why on September 20th, I am asking you to vote for me, because I will bring my passion, my integrity, and my knowledge to ensuring that the concerns of Windsor Lake are well represented in our House of Assembly.
Mr. Antle, you now have 90 seconds.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, CBC, Carrie Claire Neal, and Ches Crosby. Quick story. Campaigns can take over your life. Yesterday, we got our girls ready for school. We drove there only to realize school for us didn't start till tomorrow. On a serious note, in this election, the stakes are high for our province. Most importantly, it's about the people of Windsor Lake and who can best represent you. I lived in the district for 15 years. I met my wife Renee there. I started my 30-year business career in the district. Windsor Lake has been awesome for me, and now I want to be awesome for you. Your issues will be my issues. To the people of Penny Crescent, I committed to finding a permanent solution to protect your wetland. To our cabin owners, with the Premier's support, I wrote the Eastern Regional Services Board. I asked them to change their ways or risk a legislative review. I know how to get things done. I know how to create jobs. I employ more than 400 people. I know how to attract investment. I've raised hundreds of millions of dollars. I believe in our province because I believe in our people. Tonight, you will hear me talk about confidence. Confidence is the key to our future.
Thank you, Mr. Antle. That's your allotted time for opening remarks. Our first debate question is about the economy. There are many concerns about weaknesses in the economy of Newfoundland and Labrador. The question for you candidates is, how will you convince voters in Windsor Lake that you and your party know how to turn things around? Mr. Crosby, you have 90 seconds.
Thank you. Well, last week a major study was published which ranked Newfoundland and Labrador last out of 60 jurisdictions in North America, last out of all the jurisdictions in the United States and Canada in job creation, unemployment, and labor output and pay. 3 years of the Dwight Ball Liberal government way forward has left us dead last, going backward. Confidence in the future will turn the economy around. My platform of lower taxes, affordable energy, and honest government is what will create confidence and turn this economy around. We have to get government out of the game of trying to pick winners and losers by funneling government handouts to big corporations. Instead, it's low corporate taxes that will drive business to invest and create jobs and prosperity. Low taxes on individuals will create the confidence to spend, driving economic activity in a virtuous cycle. What business wants is low taxes, affordable and stable energy prices, and government they trust. When business has confidence in the future, jobs and prosperity follows and the economy will turn around.
Thank you, Mr. Crosby. Mr. Antle, you now have 90 seconds.
We're already turning things around. Look, I'm an entrepreneur. Back in 2016, raising money was really hard for 2 reasons. The real Tory deficit became public. It wasn't 800 million like they said, it was 2.7 billion. 2, Muskrat Falls was unraveling. Investor confidence was at a low. In less than 3 years, we've seen a dramatic turnaround. The deficit down by 2 billion and trending downward. The latest bond rating said, our fiscal recovery remains on track towards a balanced budget, and with good reason. Since 2016, our GDP is up by 4.2%. Retail sales a record high, 9 billion. Auto sales, 9.3%. Taxes are coming down. The levy is gone next year. The insurance tax already in decline. As our tax base grows, taxes will continue to go down. Investor confidence will go up. I'm working to revive the Marystown shipyard, bringing millions in foreign investment to the Burin Peninsula. Those investors would never deploy large amount of capitals if they were not confident about our prospects. There's more. Trade, the most diversified portfolio in Atlantic Canada. Manufactured exports up 12% over last year. Oil production up 5.6% and $3 billion in exploration commitments. I'm out of time, but you get the picture. We are back on track.
Thank you, Mr. Antle. All right. Ms. Neal, you now have 90 seconds on the issue of turning our economy around.
Great. I studied economics at Memorial University, not because I particularly enjoyed it, but because I could not understand what was going on with our economy. By all appearances, we should be a rich province. We had an abundant fishery. We are sitting on the banks of billions in oil. And we have an educated workforce that cares about our province. I learned during my degree that we are not a poor province, but a poorly managed one. Economics 101 taught me that during a boom, we should raise taxes because the economy is strong and there is a surplus. The progressive conservatives failed that test. And economics taught me that during a bust, we should lower taxes because profits are low and people are struggling. The Liberals failed that one too. This is not an effective way to run our government, and it's we, the people, not the millionaires, who are suffering because of it. And we can do better.
Thank you, Ms. Neal. We are now going to shift to the first debate phase of this evening. Ms. Neal, you have 2 minutes to engage Mr. Crosby on the topic of the economy.
Mr. Crosby, your platform says that you are going to have affordable energy rates, that you're going to cut taxes, but you also propose legislation that will put a cap on our debt. This is a fiscal ball and chain. I ask, what services are you going to remove, and how many jobs are you going to cut to pay for this?
So thanks for the question, and the answer is that we have to spend more wisely, not more money, but more wisely. There are savings, efficiencies to be made in the structure of core government and outside that, particularly in the healthcare system. Now, I'm not talking about cutting services. I'm talking about spending wisely. There are many efficiencies to be found if government is laser focused on finding those efficiencies. So government can cost less while delivering the same or a higher level of services to people.
You have 50 seconds, Ms. Neal.
Well, do you want to give some more details about what those efficiencies are?
Well, I was going to say as well, Ms. Neal, that there's something else going on here, and that is, I'll develop this later, we're not getting our fair share of equalization and other transfer payments from the federal government. And that has to do with the fact that we've lost population, 51,000 people, in the last 25 years since the COD moratorium.
That is not why we are not getting our fair share in equalization. Our GDP is one of the highest in the country, and we are not taxing our multinational corporations, the oil platforms that are making billions off us, rising our GDP. They are pumping that money out of our economy.
We need to move on to the second part of the debate phase. Mr. Antle, you have 2 minutes to engage Mr. Crosby.
So let's talk about why people's taxes are so high. It has everything to do with the $2.7 billion deficit the Tories left us. You, the people of our province, you played a part in helping to tackle that problem. I know it was tough. I didn't like the 2015 budget any more than you did. But now taxes are coming down. The levy is gone next year. The insurance tax is in decline. We have to do better, and we will. As our tax base expands, more jobs created, more savings realized, more taxes will come down. That plays to my strength. Identifying opportunities, attracting investment, creating jobs. If we do it right, I envision a day when we would have the lowest tax rates in Atlantic Canada. That's how we become the investment destination of choice. Now, let's talk about honesty in government. Yes, I want an honest government too. I think we all do. But do you think it was honest to tell the people we had an $800 million deficit when the truth was $2.7 billion?
Do you expect Mr. Crosby to answer that question?
Do you think it was honest to deny people the truth about Muskrat Falls? Have you had this honest government chat with your own Tory caucus, 6 of whom, by the way, belonged to and supported the dishonest government that we have, one of the most dishonest we have ever seen? There's an old saying, charity begins here at home, and I would suggest so does honesty, Mr. Crosby.
All right, we'll let Mr. Crosby answer.
I take it there was a question in there somewhere.
Multiple.
You know, Mr. Antle, I think that voters quickly grow weary and disgusted when new governments continue to blame old governments.
Now, Mr. Crosby, it just so happens
problems.
that this phase of the debate you are engaging Mr. Antle, so please continue for 2 minutes. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Okay, so I guess I don't get an answer there.
You can continue since it's the same topic.
Okay. Well, here's what I want to ask Mr. Antle. Many people think that Kathy Bennett was thrown under the bus. What makes you think that if you were elected, Dwight Ball would not throw you under the bus?
Well, Mr. Crosby, I got to say, without throwing anyone under the bus, I mean, I just want to go to your debt brake plan. And hopefully this bus has brakes on it, because I don't mean any disrespect, but there are problems with your plan as you outlined. We currently have a $700 million deficit. We're on track for a balanced budget by 2022. It's a solid, reliable plan based on sound economics. Now, it would seem that under your plan, we would roll back the deficit right away so that revenues would immediately match expenditures. Well, there are some fundamental problems with that. If you suddenly slammed the brakes on that bus and cut $700 million, where would that money come from? Health, education? The consequences are this, Mr. Crosby. It would completely destabilize our economy. We would lose services that people desperately need, and we would lose probably 10,000 jobs.
Mr. Crosby?
Well, obviously Mr. Andel doesn't want to engage with the question I asked about throwing Kathy Bennett under the bus, which I think many people out there, including in Windsor Lake, where she was the member, and it was her resignation from that seat recently that precipitated this by-election and the fact that we're standing here tonight. Mr. Andel seems disinclined to answer that challenge.
We have to move on to the second debate question of the evening, and that is, like many districts across our province, the population of Windsor Lake is aging quickly. The birth rate and immigration rates are not sufficient to allow for population growth. How would you and your party tackle this rather complex problem? Mr. Crosby, you have 90 seconds.
Yeah, so, going around Windsor Lake District, I see more for sale signs than I do political signs. People will stay here, and newcomers will be attracted here when government creates confidence. The way we create confidence is through lower taxes, affordable energy prices, and honest government that knows how to hold Ottawa to account. Now I'll explain what I was mentioning before to Ms. Neal. Let's have some honesty here. Since the COD moratorium 25 years ago, we've lost 51,000 in population, or 13% of our population, while the rest of the country has grown by a third in population. This loss is profound. Federal transfer payments, including equalization, are now calculated on a per-person basis. As our population declines, we get less and less federal transfer money. The loss is, since 2010, just measuring 2010 and now, is $500 million a year. That's $500 million a year to provide lower taxes and better public services that we're missing because there's no fight in Dwight. As long as there's no trust in Dwight, and there's no fight in Dwight.
Right, Mr. Crosby, that is your time.
We won't regain confidence.
The topic is the problems with our province's population growth. Ms. Neal, you have 90 seconds.
For the past few years, I've been working with Dr. Tony Fang in the Department of Economics studying immigration. I have co-authored half a dozen reports and articles asking this very question. Immigrants tell us that they feel safe in our communities, that people are friendly, and the landscape is beautiful. We know that Newfoundlanders and Labradorians feel the same, and they share the same concerns. Immigrants are not staying here for the same reason that our young people are not staying here. There are no jobs. We, the people of this province, want to find meaningful employment at a decent wage so that we can raise a happy, healthy family. If we are going to attract immigrants and encourage our young people to stay, we need to give them something to stay for. And the NDP is the only party that has made jobs a priority and has the solutions to encourage our people to stay here.
Thank you, Ms. Neal. Mr. Antle, you have a minute and a half.
I have a personal stake in all this. Our two young daughters, Soleil and Cleo. I want a future here for our girls and for every other child in this province. We can do that by creating opportunities so our young people believe they have a future here. Government has a two-part strategy: immigration enhancement and youth retention. Last year, we supported nearly 1,200 immigrant applications, a new high. We're on track to support 1,700 a year by 2022. They include new Canadian entrepreneurs starting businesses, creating jobs, and growing families. I'm thrilled to have so many new Canadians working on my campaign, and thank you. Our youth retention plan is in full swing. We have 2 microloan programs to help young entrepreneurs. We are second in Canada in business startups. Listen, we can get this done. Our best kept secret is our interactive media and gaming sector, an industry driven by young people with the support of a tax credit, the best in the country, and millions in private investment. We have a cluster of companies employing nearly 200 young people. Soon you will hear more about that Youth Priority Action Plan, a partnership with industry, MUN, and our college system. Actions like this will build confidence for our youth. Actions like this will keep them home.
Now, Mr. Antle, it just so happens that you are the first up in the debate phase. You may engage Mr. Crosby for 2 minutes.
I'd like to just switch very quickly. When I was going door to door, I met a young lady who wanted to re-enter the workforce, and she was making $800 every 2 weeks net, and childcare was costing $1,200 a month. So childcare is an incredibly important issue. I think it does affect population and our economy a great deal. Last year we signed a $22 million 3-year agreement with the federal government on top of the $62 million in an annual investment for childcare. We added $3 million to the subsidy program for low-income earners, and we raised the income threshold so families could qualify for a subsidy. We've increased operating grants to childcare, and we extended operating grants to regulated family childcare providers. And these grants, they help reduce the cost families pay for childcare. But it's not enough. Families are still struggling to pay for childcare, and some people aren't able to work because the amount they have to pay for that childcare means it's not worth their while. We need to find more money, and that will come as we expand and grow our economy and improve our tax base. What better motivation than affordable childcare for these families?
Mr. Crosby?
So on the immigration front, the Liberal government has had the highest number of applications. The Liberal government has introduced 2 new programs for immigrant entrepreneurs. The Liberal government has increased investment in English as a second language, increased funding for programs to welcome newcomers, and the Liberal government has increased staffing at the Office of Immigration and Multiculturalism and introduced a new online application system. All of these things will help attract new immigrants and improve our
All right,
population.
Mr. Antle, that is your time, and candidates, of course, are free to engage in a monologue if you so choose, but the idea of these phases was that there would be some exchange between candidates. And it's now up to you, Mr. Antle, to debate the NDP candidate, Ms. Neal, for 2 minutes.
Ms. Neal, I agree with what you say, and I would like to get your views on childcare.
Great. I'm happy to answer those. I am a big fan of the Quebec model. They have introduced a program where families pay $10 a day for childcare. It has had an incredible impact on their economy. Women are working, there is added value to domestic labor, and they are seeing the important effect that having a universal childcare program has on their economy. Mr. Antle, is this a model that you are considering?
Well, I mean, as I just mentioned a few moments ago, the Liberal government has done a lot to try and enhance immigration and try and make it easier for immigrants to take root in our province and become part of our economy. And we need to find more money to be able to augment that, and we will. Once we can get our taxes down, once we can deal with the burden that people have been led to believe that they will be carrying, we will be able to address those issues in due course.
So is that a no, or you have a plan to have a plan?
Oh, a plan for a plan, for a plan.
Yeah.
Well, at least we have a plan. So unlike my colleagues at the Tory party, we have been working very hard with our federal counterparts, trying to enhance the process of attracting immigrants, trying to create the culture and the support mechanisms in this province so that they stay, trying to make it easier to work and get visas. And I think we just need to work a bit harder to make that easier.
Now, it just so happens, as a matter of the draw, that it is now Ms. Neal's turn to engage with Mr. Antle. You have 2 minutes.
Well, Mr. Antle, I am very familiar with the programs that your government has implemented. You have tried to increase immigration by increasing the number of streams, but we are not reaching our quotas. People are not applying. Regional partnerships like the Atlantic Immigration Pilot Program have been a failure. So I ask, how is it that your higher taxes, like the levy, and your cuts to services like post-secondary education are creating the economic base necessary to attract immigrants and encourage our young people to stay?
Well, that's a good question. Well, as I said earlier, the Liberal government has been pursuing a number of avenues to try and enhance and attract immigrants to our province. Manitoba's got a very good model. Their immigrant population on average reaches about 16,000 people every year.
Because they have jobs.
Well, they not only have jobs, but they have support systems in place to support different cultures, and they have different systems to be able to walk new Canadians through the process of adjusting and climatizing and adapting to our environment. In this province, we have not really done that at this point. We have a lot of work to do. If we want to be able to mirror what goes on in places like Manitoba, then we have to find more investment. We have to find better ways of being able to deal with our immigrant population so that we can retain them. We cannot grow our economy if we do not have people. And our population base will not grow. It will continue to decline if we do not have an aggressive immigration policy.
But I ask, what is the point of your immigration policy if nobody is staying here?
We'll have to leave it there as we've run out of time for this section. Our third topic tonight, the question is whether it's Windsor Lake or any other district in the province, it's hard to talk about politics without the subject of Muskrat Falls coming up. The billions of dollars in cost overruns of that project present a tremendously difficult financial challenge, if not a crisis. What is the solution? Mr. Crosby, once again, you are first. You have 90 seconds.
Sure. Well, look, we've had a lot of attention on Muskrat. For example, yesterday there was a large, supposedly, announcement from the Dwight Ball government as to what they were going to do about Muskrat. I call it an exercise in dishonest government because they're kicking any decision about how to mitigate and how to manage mitigation and what rate people will actually be charged down the road until after the general election, when it's too late to have an honest discussion with the public, with the voters, as to what it is they're going to do. The solution to affordable energy is to use the Public Utilities Board to define a rate that people find affordable, which will be a rate which does not drive them away from using electricity. It is not at all clear that the Ball government, which has now finally taken my advice to make use of the Public Utilities Board, is going to use them for that purpose when I look at the terms of reference. This will sort itself out with a bit of time. So the point is, when we arrive at the point to figure out what that gap is, Where does the money come from? The federal government, who are our partners and co-adventurers in that project.
Thank you, Mr. Crosby. The issue is Muskrat Falls, as you know. Ms. Neal.
Muskrat Falls is an issue that I have been raising concerns about for a long time. I am a member of the Muskrat Falls Concerned Citizens Coalition that will represent the people's voice at the Muskrat Falls Inquiry. And I am event coordinator for the Muskrat Falls Symposium that will be taking place at Memorial University later this month. Well, I have been raising concerns and researching this project since it was first proposed. They have been telling us that there is nothing to worry about, that our negativity is disrupting their good ideas. Well, we have a right to be concerned because our concerns are real. Paul Antle is going to stand here next to me and tell you that we have nothing to fear. Well, as someone in the Telegram said the weekend, hope and optimism aren't going to pay the bills. We need someone in the House of Assembly who understands the project, who is going to hold our government accountable to give us a plan, and who we can trust. And I am the only candidate here that represents that.
Thank you, Ms. Neal. And once again, it falls to you, Mr. Antle, to be the final candidate to answer the question. Muskrat Falls, what's the solution?
Well, let's talk about the PUB. The PUB, they have our back. It's our watchdog. It's the Public Utilities Board. That means you and me. We are the public. The Tories shut out the PUB. Why? Because our watchdog would have shut down Muskrat Falls. Yesterday, our Premier sent our watchdog into Nalcor to make sure they bring that project in at the lowest possible cost. Now, yesterday, Mr. Crosby said that that move was a nothing burger. The PUB, a nothing burger. The PUB is the biggest, fattest, juiciest burger you have ever seen. Now, our Liberal plan is just as meaty. First, scrap the Tory plan. Second, ratepayers and taxpayers will not pay for Muskrat Falls. Third, Muskrat Falls is Nalcor's liability. This means using the assets and revenues available to Nalcor, including oil and gas, to pay for it. Government has already set aside $200 million a year for this, and it's a good start. Other options are the sale of surplus power, using our recall power from the Upper Churchill, and refinancing potential.
All right, thank you, Mr. Antle. That is your time on the issue of Muskrat Falls. Mr. Crosby, you may debate Ms. Neal for 2 minutes.
Thank you, sir. I see that Mr. Randall's strategy is to, in the engaged segments, is to talk out the time he might otherwise use to engage me. I'm not going to do that to you, though, Ms. Neal.
Great.
You're familiar with press reports, perhaps, that the Dwight Ball Liberal government has given a $40 million grant to Canopy Growth to establish a grow-op in the province. And that's a yes.
Yes.
Do you agree that the drug industry is one of the most lucrative on the planet?
I believe there is a lot of potential in our cannabis industry, yes.
Are you aware that Canopy Growth is valued at billions of dollars on the stock market?
Yes.
Do you think that the Dwight Ball Liberal $40 million government grant to Canopy Growth was good public policy?
No, I do not. I do not believe that we should let multinational corporations who already have billions of dollars have monopoly in our industries, push out our small, medium enterprises, and take our government money that they don't need. I believe that there's a better way to regulate our industries and to entice investment, and that was not it.
So are you against the Canopy Growth grant or against grants to big corporations in general?
I do not think that multinational corporations who are making billions of profits need our tax money to make a business here. If you can't make money selling marijuana, you probably shouldn't be in business.
I agree. Do these questions I asked you sound like they come from a status quo politician?
You know, they kind of do. You are ignoring the questions about Muskrat Falls, changing the topics.
Okay, that is the time for that. The topic is Muskrat Falls. Mr. Antle, it is your turn now. You may debate Ms. Neal for 2 minutes.
You know, a few days ago, I met a woman at the door in Airport Heights, and here's what she said about Muskrat. Who is going to fix it? So I said, well, do you mean, as Chess has alluded to, who do you trust? And she said, that's exactly what I mean. So, okay, let's talk about trust. So publicly, Chess agreed with the Liberal position that Muskrat Falls was a blunder, a mess and a burden. But he still defends it. They acted in good faith, he says. Was shutting it down by our watchdog, the PUB, acting in good faith? Shutting down the PUB, acting in good faith? He says, well, we all make mistakes as if we were shortchanged at the grocery store. Muskrat Falls is the biggest and most costly mistake in Canadian history.
And what are you going to do about it? You released a plan to have a plan. That is all that you have said. You have promised that you're going to not raise energy rates, that you're not going to raise taxes to pay for Muskrat Falls. Are you planning to privatize it?
We already outlined the plan, and the first step of that plan was not to follow the Tory plan and have a cabinet group of people set rates for everyone else in the province. The second part of that plan was to make sure that the ratepayers and the taxpayers do not pay for Muskrat Falls. Muskrat Falls is not power that we needed, and we should not have to bear the cost of that on every time you turn on the light switch.
I agree.
And so how do we pay for that debt? Having Muskrat Falls segregated from the ratepayer opens up all kinds of avenues for us to explore to pay it. We have a tremendous balance sheet in this province. We have tremendous assets. We have other revenues.
It is now time for Ms. Neal to get the floor. Ms. Neal, you have 2 minutes on the subject of Muskrat Falls to debate Mr. Crosby.
Great. Chess Crosby, you have said that Muskrat Falls was a mistake, but that it was based on the best information available at the time. A 2013 SNC Lavalin report shows that their expertise advice was that the project estimates were extremely risky, which is a nice way of saying that they were wrong. Now, you are running on a platform of honest government. So I ask, was your party being honest with the people of this province at that time?
I don't believe I've ever said that Muskrat Falls was a mistake. I've said that it seems to have turned out badly, that there have been tremendous cost overruns. But I've also always emphasized that when I hear door to door at the doorways of Windsor Lake District from the people of the district, is that they want a leader who's looking at the future and how we manage the mess that's resulted from Muskrat Falls. We have had a commission of inquiry appointed, which will cost apparently $33 million. I say, let the commission of inquiry do its work. And its work is to look at the past and to ask questions about, were mistakes made? Were mistakes made that were avoidable? Were mistakes made in bad faith? If mistakes were made in bad faith, then that's where I part company with those who made those mistakes. But until we have that determination from the Commission of Inquiry, who has been tasked with looking at the past, let the inquiry do its work.
But your party was in government. Shouldn't you have those answers?
All right,
Why do you need the inquiry?
Thank you, Ms. Neal. Our final question, it touches on something earlier when we were discussing the economy. It's about jobs. Unemployment is a problem that affects people in Windsor Lake and across the province. At 15.5%, unemployment here is more than double the national average. What hope can you give voters in Windsor Lake that you and your party have a plan to boost the number of jobs here? Ms. Neal, you have 90 seconds.
Newfoundland and Labrador has a jobs crisis. I have been talking to people at the door, and they are seeing the same things that I am. Our young people are moving away because they can't find jobs. My party is the only party that has made jobs a priority. And Jerry Rogers proposed an all-party committee on jobs and sustainable economic development that was rejected by the Liberal Party. We are also the only party that has been advocating for a $15 minimum wage, because our multinational corporations should not be making billions of profits while people are working full-time and living in poverty. We need to build our economy from the ground up. And that means ensuring that our workers are getting their fair share and earning a wage that they can live on. And that our government is working together respectfully to create a solution that works for all of us.
Thank you, Ms. Neal. On the issue of unemployment and what we can do to tackle it, it is now your turn, Mr. Antle. You have 90 seconds.
The private sector employs 65% of our provincial workforce. And as confidence grows, so will our economy and our workforce. To start a business, you need confidence. To expand a business, you need confidence. To invest here, you need confidence. For the youth to stay here, they need confidence. Any investor in this province, every day, they are looking for confidence. Our industry partnerships in job creation reflect that growing confidence. White Rose Extension, 5,000 person years of employment. Voisey's Bay, 16,000 person years during construction and 1,700 permanent jobs. Canada Fluorspar, 3,000 person years. Our infrastructure plan, 5,300 person years every year. Long-term care facilities, 4,600 person years. And a recent announcement by S&P Data, 500 permanent jobs. The federal provincial labor market agreement will give us 13,000 people with new skills to get them to work. In the oil and gas sector, we're only at 7% capacity with Beta Nord on the horizon. Don't let anyone tell you we don't have a bright future. We are headed in the right direction. Let's stay on track.
Thank you, Mr. Antle. All right. Mr. Crosby, you get to round this out before we head into the debate phase. You've got 90 seconds.
What I hear Mr. Antle talking about is more of the same. More of the same policies, more of the same approaches that have landed us dead last out of all 60 jurisdictions in North America in employment and jobs. I said earlier that the Ball Liberal Way Forward plan has turned into the way backward. We don't create confidence by government being dishonest about this ugly fact. We don't create successful, competitive private sector and permanent, well-paying jobs through government handouts. We don't create a successful, competitive private sector and permanent, well-paying jobs by closing a shipyard in Clarenville and moving jobs to the Liberal candidate, St. John's Dockyard. We don't create a successful, competitive private sector and permanent, well-paying jobs by turning the Liberal candidate's dockyard into a monopoly. A successful, competitive private sector and permanent, well-paying jobs come from lower taxes, affordable, predictable energy prices, and honest government.
Thank you, Mr. Crosby. On the unemployment issue, it just so happens, Mr. Crosby, that in the draw that we had, it is now your turn to debate Mr. Antle on this issue for 2 minutes.
Yes, employment and the economy. Mr. Antle, some people think that you're running in this by-election to ensure government help for your Marystown shipyard business deal. Can you tell the voters whether you, as a Liberal candidate, are asking for help from the Ball Liberal government?
Well, Mr. Crosby, this debate is not about my efforts to revive the Marystown shipyard. My business activities and my efforts as an entrepreneur are well known, well respected, with a high degree of integrity. And if I can bring jobs and opportunity and investment to the people of the Burin Peninsula, and I can attract tens of millions of dollars, foreign investors to help do that, well, then I am not going to apologize for that, sir.
I don't hear an answer about whether government support is being looked for. Let's change the topic slightly. In your view, has Dwight Ball shown decisive moral leadership in the House of Assembly harassment scandal?
Well, let me just say, Mr. Crosby, that on the whole harassment issue, I came out publicly denouncing any harassment in the workplace. And I fully support the Ball government in trying to bring forward the most progressive harassment policy and legislation in the country. So there is no place for it in the workplace. There is no defense for that type of behavior, and I do not support it whatsoever.
Does it make politics especially hostile to women?
All right, Mr. Crosby, unfortunately we don't have time for that. It's now Ms. Neal's turn. You have 2 minutes to debate Mr. Antle, and the topic is unemployment.
Great. We need to come together for a job strategy. The all-party committee put forward by Jerry Rogers was supported by the Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses because they understand the importance of respectful collaboration on such an important issue. Paul Antle, will you commit to work with my party on this all-party committee?
I have no problem ever working on an all-party committee. I think diverse views are healthy. Robust debate is welcome. And any solutions that any government can bring forward for the betterment of society and the economy and those within it, I'm all ears.
I'm really glad to hear that. Why do you think the Liberal Party rejected our proposal?
That's a very good question, but unfortunately I wasn't around when that happened, so I have no idea what discussions may have transpired in that whole exchange with you and your party. But I would like to just comment on an issue that Mr. Crosby brought up with respect to unions. And I mean, when the Public Service Union came out and Mr. Crosby was indicating that this was going to bankrupt the province and this was not a good deal, I took a different view, a much different view. And I supported the public sector. And I supported that union in particular. And I came out publicly and said, look, this is not going to bankrupt our province. You know, collective agreements are not meaningless. They are there for a purpose. And I have 300 union employees myself, just at my shipyard alone, and more in other businesses that I own across the province.
Right, thank you.
I have a high degree of respect for the union movement.
Thank you, Mr. Antle. Mr. Crosby, the topic is unemployment. You may now engage Ms. Neal for 2 minutes.
Thank you. Perhaps I could just mention, because you seem to be anxious for more discussion on Muskrat Falls, and also Mr. Antle brought up somewhat playfully a reference to the Public Utilities Board. The Public Utilities Board is my home territory. I was board lawyer for 7 years, so I know something about the Public Utilities Board. But the subject of collective bargaining and unions came up in the context of the economy and jobs. I'm wondering what your view is on whether this province, in your opinion, needs legislation to prevent the hiring of replacement workers. And here I have the DNC composites issue in mind. 600 days now, or something like that, maybe more than 600 days. The workers there have been, I guess you call it a lockout. What's your views on how that could be resolved?
Great question. I believe the company is actually DJ Composites, and I have been concerned about the strikes that have been happening. 2 years is too long, and it's so great that they are unionized employees who have strike pay to help them get through this tough time. Twice now, that company has broken our labor legislation, and the Liberal Party has done nothing about it. We need to make sure that our labor legislation is followed by companies who are living and operating in our district. And I think it's really important that we respect that legislation.
So I would like to know, do you have any specific recommendation that would go to solving that long drawn out dispute?
Like I said, they have broken our labor laws. We already have that legislation in place.
All right, Ms. Neal, take that point. We have to wind things down now. I want to thank the candidates for the debate phase. Each of you will now get 60 seconds. You can summarize, raise new issues. This is free time for you. Mr. Crosby, you have 60 seconds.
Yes, this didn't fit in conveniently in other questions that were asked, but I want to address the Penny Crescent wetlands issue. I became aware of this early in my knocking on doors in the district when people at the doors brought it up to me. And so Mr. Antle mentions having taken an interest in this, and I believe I've seen a video that you did saying that you're against development, housing development for that area, that wetland. I undertook and I reviewed a bundle of documents on the history of the development provided to me courtesy of Councillor Deanne Stapleton, and I wrote a letter myself to the Minister of the Environment, the acting minister as he is right now, Mr. Parsons. I asked the minister to confirm a statement made by the previous minister that the minister will not issue a permit unless new information indicates this is not a wetland.
All right,
it
Mr.
is
Crosby,
clearly
thank you very much.
not a wetland.
Appreciate that, Mr. Crosby. Ms. Neal.
The people of Windsor Lake have a unique opportunity to send a message to our government that they are fed up with the status quo. We are all burdened with the Muskrat Falls hydroelectric dam that is threatening to increase our electricity and our tax rates. This project was proudly brought to you by Chess Crosby's Progressive Conservative Party. In 2015, the Liberals asked for our trust and promised to solve the economy and fix Muskrat Falls. 3 years later, all we've gotten are broken promises. The people of Windsor Lake deserve better. And that is why I am asking you to vote for me, because I am the only candidate here that you can trust.
Thank you, Ms. Neal. And the final word, Mr. Antle, you get the final word. You now have 60 seconds.
So what can I say in 60 seconds? My wife Renee said, well, Paul, tell people what you want them to know most about you. And the most important thing is this: I got your back. I will not let you down. I started with nothing. I worked extremely hard over my lifetime, building lasting relationships, identifying opportunities, creating jobs, and helping out my community. I never quit. I know how to get things done. I want to put that experience to work for Windsor Lake and our province. I love this place. I want a shot at seeing what I can do to make it a better place for all of us. We got 14 months until the next election. You'll know then if I can deliver. I want the job. Put me to work for you. And I say again, I got your back.
All right.
I won't let you down.
Thank you, Mr. Antle. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all three of the candidates for being part of tonight's debate. And of course, also like to remind people who've been watching the debate tonight that the voting day is September 20th. And I'm sure all the candidates would encourage all of you to head out to vote. Thank you very much for watching. Normal Here and Now back for Friday. We'll see you then.